Hey guys, let's go over the Chapter 3 test taken March 4th, 2021. George surveyed a random selection of 24 employees in a company and found that they spent an average of $90 per month commuting to work. Based on the information, which statement is most likely true? Which statements just means there's only one answer here. There are exactly 24 employees in the company, and all the employees in the company drive themselves to work. Doesn't say that, right? Because if someone takes public transportation or maybe it gets dropped off, then maybe they're spending zero. So 0 is a valid number. Everyone George surveyed spends $90 per month commuting to work. Well, that's true. Well, that's kind of certain. It's an average, right? You can have like someone does 0 and some person does 180. So that's exact. That's an exact amount. So no. All employees in the company spend an average of $90 per month on commuting to the office. That's my answer, D. Why is it this one? If you think about it, the sample, the small little sample, tells us something about, the population of all these people over here. Does that make sense? That's what sampling is, and that's what kind of collecting data, that's why it's important. I don't have time to ask every single person, but it's going to tell me something about the whole population, which would be all the employees. All right, question number 2. John randomly selected 15 ninth grade students of his high school and asked them how much time they spend surfing the internet. Which of the following describes a population represented by the sample? All right, so in this problem, he only surveys 15 ninth graders. Okay, I'm highlighting that. 15 ninth graders. Okay. A, all the students in the high school? No. Where's the sophomores, juniors, and seniors? Does that make sense? B, all high school students in his school. Okay. Maybe, but again, where are the 10th, 11th, and 12th graders? So I think no for that one. All 9th grade students in his school. Well, they only survey 9th graders, so it does speak about 9th graders. I like that one. And all 9th grade students who are John's friends. And that's bias. So my answer is going to be C. If he had a good sample of other grades, that would be helpful. But if it's just 9th graders, then it's only speaking about 9th graders. Number 3. To test the impact of high-pitched sound waves on the growth rate of grass seedlings, a researcher prepared 40 pots of seedling and divided them into 5 sets of 8. So 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, okay? He placed one of these sets in a soundproof room. Okay, so I don't know. When you think of high-pitched sounds, I think of sometimes when my kids scream. But if you put them in a soundproof room, that means they're getting no sound. One group is. and then arrange for the other 4 to receive 1, 5, 10, and 15 hours. So 1 hour, 5 hours, 10 hours, and 15 hours. Which statement? So only one answer. It is a randomized experiment because the subjects of the study were randomly chosen and randomly assigned a treatment. Okay, I don't see the word randomized, right? Slips of paper. I don't see the word SRS, so no on that one. B, it is a controlled experiment. Because the subjects of the study were randomly chosen and there was a control group that was not assigned any treatment. Okay, controlled, and there's one of them in the, controlled experiment because there was a control group, meaning they didn't get the variable, they didn't get the variable of interest. So that would be the no sound group. So I like this one. And as you see, as I'm going through multiple choice, I like to not just go through 2 of them, I like to go through all of them to make sure. It is a sample survey study because the subjects of the study were used to represent conditions of the entire population. I don't see anything about like he's at a nursery, he doesn't have time to look at all of his pots or grass ceilings, so. And the last one. It is an observational study because the subjects of the study were closely observed without being assigned a treatment. That's wrong. He wasn't just watching. He actually gave them, lots of high-pitched sounds. So B is our correct answer. All right, let's look at number 4. A teacher conducts a survey to find out how often students at a particular high school forget to do their homework. Huh, what an interesting experiment. Which of the following is the most effective random sampling method for this study? Okay, so remember we talked about before there are bad ways and there are good ways. A, selecting every 20th student ID number from an ordered list. Okay, it's systematic. Doesn't seem like there's any bias. That's a good one. B, selecting a random sample of 50 students who turn in their homework regularly. Okay, how about the people who don't do homework, right? Selecting a random sample of 50 students who turn in their... I think this question was meant to be don't turn in. I'm gonna add that to the test. Then you do the opposite, like what happens... I'm not just picking on those students who don't do their homework, I kind of want to know about everyone, right? That's the point of a sample. So I'm just going to write the word everyone. Where is everyone? And then the last one, selecting the 50 students who live farthest from the school. So there's a bias. How about who live close? All right, the answer from Edulastic, a random sample is one that is likely to represent all parts of the population without any bias toward a particular part of it. The second, third, and fourth options are all biased part of the population in some way. Students who turn the homework, students with a popular teacher, and students who live far from the school. So only the first option would provide a random sample. Selecting every 20th student ID number from the order list would give each member of the student population an equal chance of being chosen and would lead to a random sample. Thank you, Edulastic. So A is our answer. All right, let's do number 5. A researcher wanted to understand the impact of 2 types of diabetes medications on patients with acute allergies. Acute just means you get hay fever. It's actually right now. She randomly chooses okay, I like this. Randomly chooses 200 students from the population and divides them. Patients who suffer from acute allergies and randomly, I like that again, so random twice, which I like. The first group receives medication number 1. We'll call this medication number 1 and medication number 2. The patient responses to the medications are recorded. Which statement best describes this study? It is a controlled experiment because the subjects of the study are randomly chosen and there is a control group that was not assigned any treatment. There was none. I got like no medicine because you're comparing medicine and no medicine. So no. It is a randomized experiment because subjects of the study were randomly chosen. Yes, how we got them. And randomly assigned to a treatment. Yes. I like this one. C. It is an observational study because the subjects of the study were closely observed without being assigned a treatment. No. Because you picked them, right? And then you placed them. Think of the claw back in Toy Story, like the researchers doing something is a lot. It's not just watching, it's actually doing something. It is a sample survey study because the subjects of the study are asked questions to represent the entire population. Remember, we don't actually hear that in the goal, so no. In a randomized experiment, subjects are randomly chosen and randomly assigned a treatment. In this case, the 200 subjects are chosen randomly from all patients with acute allergies and then randomly assigned one of the 2 medications as treatment. So it is a randomized experiment. Go B. All right. Number 6. A farmer is interested in the growth of rice stalks in her field. Okay, so now I want to point this out as I'm reading it. Her field, which is all. She divides the field into 25 squares and randomly selects 8 of them. Okay, so there again. Her field, all of them, 25, but she's only getting 8 of them. Then she measures, measures. I'm just going to write the word passive. Not really doing much. You're not placing them in groups, you're not setting them aside, you're not giving certain fertilizers. Measure the growth of rice stalks in these 8 squares to get a better sense of how stalks grow in the entire field. Again, all. So part to all. Which statement best describes this study? It is an experiment because the farmer divided the area into 25 sections and measured each section. No, that's just an easy way of figuring out, you're not going throughout the whole field, kind of systematically thinking about a plan. So I don't think it's wrong. It is a sample survey because the farmer randomly selected 8 sections and used these to draw conclusions about the entire region. Yeah, I like this one. Remember, a sample is just part to the whole, and there really was no treatment applied. And it is an observational study because the farmer observed the growth stalks over time and recorded the results without assigning any treatment. That one is kind of true. I'm going to give this one a second check, but I think this is generally true, but I think this one's better because it kept talking about, we talked about the whole field. If it was just observational, the farmer could have just walked around, right? Didn't have to necessarily divide up all 25. Angelastic says, in an experiment, the researcher assigns treatments to subjects and then observes the results of these treatments. for A or B, in a sample survey, the researcher randomly chooses the subjects to observe and uses them to draw a broader conclusion about the population. In an observational study, the researcher observes the subject and measures variables without assigning any treatments. So the farmer doesn't do any treatments, that's why I put 1 check, not 2. In this case, the farmer is using 8 randomly selected squares of the field to represent 25 squares. So it is a sample survey. All right, number 7. A geologist collected 10 rock samples, and for each sample, he recorded the place of origin, the color, and likely age. So just taking notes. Okay, you might be thinking this researcher does something by collecting them, but does it divide it into 2 groups? No. Is it an experiment because the geology tested the color and appearance of the samples? No. Maybe if they applied some chemicals to it or different conditions and see what happens to it. Observational study, because observe the rocks without assigned treatment. Yes, I like this one. Sample survey, because the geologist randomly chose 10 rocks to study. No. I don't know. Where's all of the rocks? It doesn't mention that. A geologist does an experiment. The researcher assigns treatments to the subjects and then observes the results. In a sample survey, the researcher randomly chooses subjects to observe and use them to draw broader conclusions about the population, which we didn't see an emphasis on. The observational study, the researcher observes the subject that measures variables without assigning any treatments. In this study, the geologist just observed the rocks and recorded some of their physical properties. There is no indication that the rocks were chosen at random, and there were no treatments assigned to them. So all you can conclude is that it was an observational study. All right. Number 8. Determine if each given sample is random or not random. Miss Patel, the chess team captain, writes the names of each of the 12 members on separate pieces of paper. She places the slips in a box, shakes it, and selects 5 slips with her eyes closed. The 5 members whose names are chosen will complete a survey about the chess team. I think of a couple of things. Was there equal chance? There's slips of paper. Yes. Does each of the 12 members have a separate piece of paper? Have an equal chance? Yes. Does the 5 slips change each person's equal chance? No. We're going to learn that in probability in chapter 4. So this one is random. All right. Number 9. To design a sample survey, observational study or experiment, determine a characteristic of interest, identify the population, write a question that can be answered by collecting quantitative data, collect a sample using a method that avoid bias, and eliminate elements of that design that may introduce confounding. Match each definition to its corresponding terms. Okay, so basically you guys have all these drop-down menus here, and you can, just write. You're dragging, but I'm just going to be writing. All right, a study that gathers a data about a characteristic of the population by simply observing. Well, what do you think that one's going to be? Okay, observational study. A survey that poses one or more questions of interest to a sample of a targeted population. So that would be here's a keyword, survey. It's only a sample survey. And as you go through yours, you can just check them off. That would be helpful. The members of the sample of an experiment. These are the experimental units. a specific question that you're trying to answer, or the specific information you are trying to gather. If you guys use process of elimination, this is called the characteristic of interest. Right, just smoking causes cancer, stuff like that. A situation occurs when there are other reasons for the results to have occurred that were not identified in the population. Remember, we're trying to go X. Does X cause Y, but maybe it's Z to Y. This is confounding. A sample that is not representative of the population. This would be biased. An experimental condition that is used on treatment groups. This is the treatment. See it? Next one. A process that gathers data on the effect of one or more treatments on the characteristic of interest. That process would be called an experiment. And the last one, a sample that is selected from the population in such a way that every member of the population has the same chance of being selected. That would be a random sample. Okay. And the last one. A police chief of a town is trying to determine the average speed of drivers on a specific road. The police chief took a random sample of speeds of 100 drivers on the road. The mean, or the average, was 48.5 miles per hour with a standard deviation of 2.5 miles per hour. So remember, standard deviation is just variability, like some people drove faster, some drove slower. The police chief wanted to decrease the margin of error of his next sample. Which choice would decrease the margin of error? Okay, remember the margin of error is from the point of interest. You know, people drive, I just put plus here, it's a plus. Some people drive faster, and some people drive slower. Now it even tells you a formula, if you need it. The margin of error is 2 times the sample standard deviation over the sample. Okay, now if you look at my choices here, there are no calculations. Like, there's no numbers, right? So you don't really need that information. I guess it can help you, but how do I really find out the average speed of drivers that the chief is trying to do? Would I decrease the sample size? No, this would actually increase the margin of error. That's more variability. Increase the sample size. Always increasing the sample size is good. It's more accurate. This would decrease the margin of error. Change the time that the data is collected. Now, that's interesting that the police chief doesn't tell us when, right? Maybe he's looking for a particular time, but doesn't mention that. So, you know, if you did it at nighttime, I'm assuming there's less people on the road and people will drive faster. And then if it's during the middle of the day when there's traffic, when people are trying to pick up their kids, coming home and going to work. So I think that would actually mess up things. Change the road on which the data is collected. Maybe you go from a busy street to a not busy street, but again, the numbers would change, but I think for the police chief, you might want to just kind of stay there. I think that would be more accurate. So B is our correct answer. And those are our solutions for the Chapter 3 test. See you guys. Bye.